Okay, so here we have the a7R5. Yeah. The a7R5 is a very interesting camera. They've decided to change a few little bits and pieces, but the R formula for cameras has been excellent for a very long time. I did actually have an a7R3, and Gavin actually has had all of the a7R series ever since, you know, the first one. The first one was quite funny because when I first met him, actually, it had a really loud shutter, so it sounded like Thor's hammer, which was pretty cool. So the a7R5 actually has a few new and interesting things. So you've got a 61 megapixel full frame sensor that allows you to get some incredibly highly detailed images. One of the companies that we do some work with every now and then is actually a watch reseller. So they resell Rolexes. And what's really great about this camera is that using a very sharp macro lens, we can get some incredible detail out of it. Here's some B-roll Gav actually shooting it, and it's a very interesting camera. One of the coolest things I think the camera has actually added is the new LCD flip screens. So of course you've got the cool usual LCD, which allows you to just flip it like you usually do. So if you just want to do your down low and up high images, you can do that fairly easily with this screen. But then you've also got this thing. It comes out. Look at that. It comes out. That's cool, isn't it? Of course, it's nice to have the LCD flip screen there, but overall, you know, having the ability to tilt it up like that and then tilt it down in a nice, like, compact form factor is really useful for photographers. So if you want to get some low profile street shooting or some, you know, but also getting it into like nooks and crannies for like landscape, architecture, all those little bits and pieces. This camera can do that quite easily, and it's a really interesting kind of reinventing the wheel there. So of course with that, let's talk about some video specs. This actually shoots 8K at 24p. Of course you've got the ability to shoot at 4K 60 as well as 4K 30. The 4K 60 I believe is actually cropped, but don't necessarily need full frame 4K 60. I've got other cameras for that. We're actually shooting an a7S III and an FX6 today, and you know, the 4K 60 full frame out of that is excellent, but this gives you some other options there as well, especially with that 8K, which the a7S III and the FX6 doesn't do. Again, the a7R5, they've really done a good job at creating a solid and very powerful camera. I know a lot of photographers that have actually gone with this with their main driver, and it served them really well. The level of detail and sharpness out of your images from this camera, it's second unto none. They've now improved the autofocus system. It's got an AI-driven processing unit to help out the autofocus, make sure that the things that you're focusing on are always in focus. It's changed out some of its formula to create an even better camera, and you can't really, you know, fault it, to be honest with you. The ergonomics of the camera still feels pretty excellent in my hands. Can't lie, it, you know, perfect fit, does everything I want it to. You have actually got ports on this camera. I love showing off my ports. So you've actually got a full HDMI. The full HDMI is pretty much what I prefer in my cameras these days. It is reliable, it doesn't break as often, because the amount of HDMIs that I've been through personally over, you know, however long I've been doing videos, I've only really found reliability out of full HDMI. It needs to be a standard for cameras these days to have full HDMIs. Micro, mini, they are great, but I find these are a lot more reliable. They've kept their advanced image stabilization in there, 5-axis, which allows you to get a lot more stable shots, especially when it comes to video, but also when you're using low shutters as well in low light situations. It allows you to sharpen up that image, and it's always useful to have a little bit of stabilization on the sensor itself. So something that I have noticed, and Gav, who has used this camera to do some photography, has noticed, is that it's actually got an improved viewfinder. And when it comes to looking down the viewfinder, it's really important for photography. You know, it's useful. I don't personally use the viewfinder on these cameras that much when it comes to video, but when it comes to shooting photos, which is what this is designed around, the viewfinder is excellent quality with 9.44 million dots. That's a lot of dots. It's a large amount of dots. Of course, you've got the new dual card system. You've actually got the ability to use Type A cards as well as SD cards, which I think is a really cool way of doing it. It's nice to be able to use those higher quality cards, but you still can use pretty much a lot of the functions without them. Of course, when you are shooting with this camera, the buffer is going to fill up very quickly if you're shooting at higher frame rates. To use this for shooting wildlife, sports, trains, vans, cars, all that kind of jazz. So ultimately, who is this camera for? I think Sony have introduced yet another really good camera for creatives, hybrid shooters, travel bloggers, vloggers and stuff like that, because it's a great camera to be able to take photos with of like mountain ranges, nature, all that kind of fun stuff. Portrait shooters, definitely. I can see this being used in a lot of studios for high quality photography, so with your products and stuff like that. It is, of course, Sony not reinventing the wheel, knowing that this is a good system anyway. It's just improving upon some of the things that Sony have been given feedback on. So of course you got a 61 megapixel sensor, which you can't fault it. That's more than enough resolution for a lifetime. The camera itself is incredibly versatile for pretty much any situation. Like I said, it can be used by pretty much any creative as well as hobbyists, people that are looking to take some incredible photos. It's at the price point where more professionals will probably go for it. It's a really good camera. That's my first thoughts and opinions, with a little bit of B-roll of us actually using it, because this is a particular camera that we do want to get. And hope you've enjoyed. My name's Stuart, and this is Camera Center UK.